I'm going to demo creating an agent plugin. So the goal will be to use the new standard that OpenAI just announced for agent plugins to create a client onboarding plugin. So the plugin will have multiple skills inside of it. It will also link with like multiple different tools that it can use to actually like automate certain parts of the client onboarding process. So at the end of it, what will hopefully happen is I can add a plugin into my ChatGPT account, and we can talk about it along the way, but also into some of my other AI accounts, if I use any others, to use the same exact like workflow to onboard a new client. So that'll be the example that I go through here. This could obviously be applied to any other sort of like business process or set of tasks or anything like that. So the first thing that I'm going to do here in the ChatGPT app, I am just in the work tab. And if you click, I'm on Mac, so I click Command T, or you could click Control T and open the browser. So I'm going to pop open a few things for ChatGPT to actually look at as we go through this process. So I have a couple tabs that I already opened here. I have this agentplugins.org. This is the new framework, the new standard that OpenAI and some other partners like Cursor, Microsoft, Amazon, and some others announced. And then I also have a GitHub repository. If you're not familiar with this, don't worry, we won't really be talking about this too much. This is just where I'm going to store the plugin so that I can add it back into ChatGPT later. So we'll talk about that briefly when we get there. So from here, I have a prompt that I will send, and we will look at the prompt together. So I am saying, and I'll explain the agent plugins like once we look at this, but I'm saying follow the guidelines outlined in the agent-plugins.org in the in-app browser, so it should be able to see this. You're building a plugin exactly aligned with this framework. And then I listed the MCPs, so I just know from like my own onboarding that these are the different systems that are going to be relevant. So Notion, Google Drive, Gmail, and Slack. And then I've listed, I actually just like researched this. I could have just told ChatGPT to find these as well, but I listed the MCP servers for these, which I'll talk about again in a second. And then I just said we're creating a client onboarding plugin, create the skeleton of the plugin inside my GitHub repo called Agent Plugins, also in the in-app browser. So you can see now these little icons. This is ChatGPT like looking at what's in here and using the browser itself, but I did want to talk about a few things. So here in the browser itself, we can see, let me open another one so that it can work in that one while I look in this one. So this is the standard that they announced. So basically a plugin is just like a folder, and then there's a plugin.json, which just kind of describes like what this plugin is. And then there's a set of skills. So a lot of you are probably familiar with skills at this point, but if you're not, it's like a little mini automation that can do a certain task for you. So we'll talk about this more as part of like the onboarding stuff that I'm creating, but my onboarding stuff is going to have several different skills inside of the plugin. And then the other piece that's important here is the mcp.json. And if you're familiar with connectors in Claude or ChatGPT, they use an MCP to add that connector into your Claude account. So like when you click on a connector, like for example, and then you log in, that's basically just using this same MCP here. So, and I think what will happen, we'll find out here in our test, but I think what will happen is ChatGPT will just create this mcp.json for me. Like I won't have to do anything, but likely the first time that I run this plugin, I'll have to log into each of these tools, and then it should remember my login after that. So we'll do that as part of the test. I honestly don't know because this is so new, but that's what I'm thinking will happen. And we'll let it go for a second here. Okay, so it looks like it's done creating the skeleton. So it's saying what it included here, and then it's saying I can review it here. So if I click this, it should just pop open something here. So yeah, it looks like this is the package that it's going to push into GitHub here in just a second. So I'll tell it to do it, and from here it should just add it into GitHub, and if we need to adjust anything later on, it shouldn't be too big of an issue. Okay, so we got it to push into GitHub. So if I click over here, we should see it in there now. Probably need to refresh. All right, so we've got the plugin / client onboarding here now. And if I do this, I'll copy this, and I'm going to put this prompt in. So I'll send it and then we can read it. But the goal here is to start adding the skills to this plugin now. So there's several things here. What I'm trying to do is give it context about like what it is that I even want to create. So I'm saying let's add the skills. The plugin handles onboarding a new project for a new or existing client across Notion, Google Drive, Slack, and Gmail. The workflow should, number one, find the client in Notion, create it if it doesn't exist, then create a Notion project linked to that client, ensure the client and project folders exist in Google Drive, then link them to the correct Notion records, ensure the client has a Slack channel named client and then -- client name, create a Notion task called kickoff project linked to the client and the project, and then review relevant Gmail history to draft like a kickoff email, for example. So I'm asking it to use prior conversation context as well when creating that email. I actually have a few tasks that I already use for this stuff. So I have a task -add skill that basically tells Claude and ChatGPT how to add a task into my Notion database, and then the same thing for a project. So I'm just telling it like, you can go grab these skills to use as part of this onboarding workflow. And then ultimately, I think, this is at least how I envision this, I think that we should have several skills. So client add, which is going to add any clients to Notion, G Drive folder add, which will add new folders obviously to Google Drive, Slack channel add, which is self-explanatory, kickoff email draft. And then this last one I think is maybe not obvious, but kind of important. This is the client-onboard skill, and it's what I would consider to be like the master skill that will help. Basically, like the whole plugin will look at this master skill to understand the onboarding process. Basically, kind of how I just explained it. It will probably have something similar to these steps, and it will actually like call these other skills that exist in each step wherever they're necessary. So this is kind of like the master skill that the entire onboarding process will follow. We'll let ChatGPT actually like create the skills here. It's likely going to work for a little while because there's several different skills that it's going to have to create from scratch in order to do this. So it might even ask me some questions, some follow-ups. So we'll let it go for just a few minutes and see where we get. Okay, so it finished running after about 14 minutes. We have 7 skills here that are going to be part of the plugin. It looks like it's ready to go. Normally, my recommendation would be you should look at these and you should see if they seem directionally correct. But because I'm doing this as part of a demo and I want this to go quickly, I'm gonna just add them, and then I guess we'll just test it as part of the plugin, and we can always update it from that point. Ideally, you would probably test like each of these skills individually to make sure they each work first so that it's easier to make changes. Or an even better scenario would be you already have some of these skills running and you just kind of package them in a plugin. But in this case, I'm going to tell it to push to main. So it should actually just push this into GitHub underneath this folder, this client onboarding folder. What's happening so far is the setup is actually very similar. You can actually see here in the README, which is basically just like a informational file. This is saying what this looks like. So you can see the plugin.json, mcp.json, and the skills, just like we had outlined in the agent plugins standard that OpenAI mentioned. So it looks like it is setting it up correctly. These skills will likely just get replaced with these 7 different skills here, or the skills folder. I guess we'll add the 7 skills into it. So once this is done, we should see, it'll probably update the README as well, but we'll see inside of this skills folder. Let me actually go back. Inside of this skills folder, we'll see the different skills that were added. So it just added this now, and you can see it updated the README, these 7 skills. And if I click in the skills folder, you'll see them here. So like I said at the beginning, like you don't necessarily need to know what GitHub really even is, to be honest. Like at this point, the AI models know it so well that you kind of don't even have to. You just need to know that that's how it stores this stuff. We've added those skills. Like really at this point, the plugin is done. Obviously, the plugin itself, like we will have to test it and everything, but the plugin itself should have everything that we need. All right, so this is why we do testing. So there's some issue with the standard already where you can't just add the plugin. So that's really annoying. So we're finding that out live. You actually have to create a marketplace to add it into the ChatGPT app first to be able to access the plugin. So I'm going to drop a prompt in here where I'm telling it to do this. So some of this, I actually got this from ChatGPT itself, but you could easily just ask it to create a marketplace for you. I'm just trying to like give it a little extra info to guide it in the right direction so that it doesn't take as long and doesn't take as much iteration. So if you go into plugins here in the left sidebar, actually, you'll see that you can navigate here to personal. So I already have a few in here. But in order to add it, I can create a plugin, which is not the new standard, or at least as of right now, it's not. They'll probably update this pretty soon. Or you can click add a marketplace. So if you click this, there's a different process than if you're just trying to add a single plugin. So right now they have clearly got some issues that they need to work through, even in their own app, to make this seamless. It's annoying to have to create a marketplace. That's just obviously something we don't want to have to do to easily add plugins, whether it's our own or other people's plugins that they've created and shared. So definitely something that needs to be fixed. Okay, so it has added the marketplace to the plugin. So if I go back to agent plugins, you'll see I can click here and there's a marketplace.json. So this basically is what I need to add it into the ChatGPT app. I also said I need these fields in order to add it. Okay, so I've taken the fields that I need and I'm going to add this marketplace. So I got this info directly from ChatGPT. Hopefully this will work. I'll click on add marketplace. And so now I can see the agent plugins here. It's popped up. I'll click install. So when I click install on this, it actually popped open something on my other screen. It's a login, so I'm not going to share it, but it is the Notion login. It's granting access to the Notion MCP. So I'll click continue there. So it looks like, interestingly, that's the only one that popped up, even though I have several others that are part of this. So if I click into this plugin, this client onboarding plugin, these are connected. So Gmail, Notion, Slack are connected, Drive is not. So we may have an issue when we test this with Drive, just in looking at this. But you can see here, these are the different skills, the 7 skills that we created. So the plugin's now in here, which is cool. Okay, so I'm gonna test the plugin. So if I go at, and then client, it should pop up client onboarding. So here's the plugin itself, client onboarding. So I'll say, just received an email from Tom. So this is a fake email that I just sent myself. So we'll see if it can grab that, take a look, and then do the onboarding workflow. And then I'm just telling it in this case, like, don't stop for approvals, because for the demo, I just want it to go end to end. I realize there's like 2 issues probably. The first is I don't have like enough context. It's literally just a short email that I sent. So it's gonna have to like make assumptions. The other problem is like, I obviously didn't review each skill individually, so there could potentially be some issues there. Looks like it used the Gmail connector. That's saying Gmail is not authenticated, so that's interesting because I checked my account before and it was saying it was authenticated, so I don't know what's going on there, so that's a little odd. So it found the real message. So Tom is with Liquid Pretzels. So for whatever reason, it had like a weird issue with the Gmail integration. It's running the rest of this plugin, it looks like. Hopefully it's actually like following the skills that are inside of this plugin. Looks like right now it's like checking Notion and stuff to see if everything exists. So I'll let it keep running for a little bit. So it came back with, it didn't actually do anything. It just is asking for my approval on things. It went through everything already and it looked for stuff. So it said there's no active client, no active project, no folder in the Google Drive for the client or the project, obviously. Nothing in Slack yet. So it's like, it's proposing all these things. So I'm just going to say, and it's giving me an email that I can edit here as well. So I'm just going to say proceed with everything. So it actually did a pretty good job here of reading everything in the plugin. So it's doing all of this because it read the skills in this plugin, it read all of the info, and it knows exactly what it needs to do to complete all of this stuff. So again, I'll let it run for just a little bit. Okay, so it actually finished here. If I go here, it says 6 of the 7 are verified. So the Gmail draft, it's saying this because it came from my email address. So it's like confused that that's a Tom's address. So I could just say send that, but let's just check a few of these things. This is what it did in Notion. So it created this client and it linked this Google Drive folder. This looks pretty good. It created this subfolder underneath this Liquid Pretzels client, which is exactly what we wanted. And then there's a new project here as well underneath this client in Notion. And this links to that folder we just saw. It looks like it did everything correctly. It added the new task, linked the client in the project. So yeah, it did pretty much everything correctly, it looks like. And then in Slack, let me just check this. I don't know if I can share because I don't want to share all my Slack info, but if I refresh this, I see client Liquid Pretzels in my Slack as well. So yeah, it did everything, and then ideally it would also send the email, but it's actually flagging it. This is a good thing, it's flagging it because the email address doesn't look like it belongs to Tom, my fictional character in this situation. So the plugin actually worked. There was a slight workaround obviously on the like adding the plugin through using a marketplace. Hopefully they will fix that so that you don't have to do that anymore. That would be great because then creating and sharing plugins will be much easier. But overall, the framework is, I personally think, like maybe with a few adjustments, like the framework is great because it would be awesome if I could just easily also go add this plugin to Claude, which right now I couldn't. I would have to change it to be able to like use it in the specific way that Claude requires for plugins to be added. I would just use AI to do that, but it's just nice if they're all like portable across different systems. Yeah, hopefully this was helpful. I know this was like maybe a little more complex than like some of the other demos, but I did want to show like what the goal of these plugins is and how you can actually think about a plugin in general in terms of like a package of skills. All you have to do is just talk to the plugin itself to tell it to do something. This is a pretty simple prompt, obviously, and it went and did all the things that it needed to. Only one other message from me approving it. So all in all, I think this was pretty successful. Let me know if you want to see more stuff on plugins. Thanks.